Greetings everyone. Today we're going to explore finding the intercepts, specifically of a linear function. We do have a foldable for this, but if you have not printed off Google Classroom or don't have one available from school, make sure you jot this down in your notebook. Our goals today, we're going to find the intercepts of a linear equation. We're going to graph those intercepts, and we're going to revisit horizontal and vertical lines. On our note sheet, we have some fill in the blanks here. Let's talk about just an x-intercept. An x-intercept is the point where a graph crosses the x-axis. It's in the name. Think about what intercept means to you outside of the math classroom. If we intercept a pass, we're crossing the pathway of that ball. So we're talking about where am I crossing the path of an axis. X-intercepts happen when the y-coordinate is 0. Just think about a graph. If I was to plot it on the axis, that would mean it'd be a number, comma, 0. To find the x-intercepts from just an equation, we're going to replace f of x, or y, with a 0 and solve for x. That makes sense. Look at this. If the y is always going to be 0, then plug in 0 for y. And then we're going to use all our previous knowledge from the previous unit to solve for the variable. Let's jump over to y-intercept, which is the exact flip. A y-intercept, it's in the name, is the point where the graph crosses the y-axis. So y-intercepts happen when the x-coordinate is 0. Think about it. If I have a dot on the y-axis, I would have 0, comma, some number, whatever it may be. If it's on the y-axis, you'll always have a 0 here. So to find that y-intercept from an equation, that means I'm going to replace the x value with the 0, and we're going to solve for y. So think about what you remember from solving tables. Tables, you were given a bunch of x values, you plugged them in, you found a y value. We're going to shorten up this process by only finding 2 points. So let's take a look. We're going to find x and y intercepts of this equation. I'm going to show you 2 ways to approach it, and you're going to decide which way you prefer. The first option is to write it out as 2 equations, and you are going to replace each variable with 0. So let's say I want to find x. If I want to find the x-intercept, then I replace y with 0. 4 times 0 is 0. Divide both sides by 3. X equals 8. And then I'm going to do the same for the y. If I want to find y, I'm going to replace x with 0. 3 times 0, 0. Divide both sides by 4, y equals 6. Now, I'm going to be picky how you write these answers. Intercepts are where we cross the axis, which means it's a dot. If the x was 8 because the y was 0, or when the x was 0, the y was 6. So I really, really want you to write these as coordinate points. The second or alternative way is if tables really made sense to you, then you're going to make a table. X work Y, just like the previous lesson. I'm going to plug 0 in for X on one problem, and I'm going to plug 0 in for Y on the other problem. Then it's similar to what you've done before. So if I'm going to plug in 0 for X, I'm going to write the equation 0 for X, and I'm going to show my work right in the table. So I got Y equals 6. There's my coordinate point, 0, 6. Then if I'm going to plug 0 in for y, so your work is shown slightly different than our other table work, but we're still showing work inside the table. 4 times 0, divide both sides by 3. That's how we arrived at 8, 0. So you have to pick. Do you want to just do the algebra equation work, or did that table help you visualize? Let's try it again. This time we're going to use this equation, and we want to find both intercepts. So I'm going to find x first. Whatever you're trying to find is the letter you keep. -6 times 0, divide both sides by 5, x equals 12. And then we're also going to find my y-intercept. If I want y, I keep y. That means x is 0. 5 times 0, divide both sides by -6. Watch out for your signs. Now we want to write both of these as coordinate points, 12, 0, 0, -10. If that made sense to you, feel free to move on. I'm also going to show my work as a table. So that means I have to plug in 0 for the x and 0 for the y. So if I plug in 0 for the y, then my work would be plugging in 0 for y right inside the workspace. Divide both sides by 5. That's how I got my 12. And if I plug in 0 for the x, finding my y, divide by -6. So the work looks the same. It's the same amount of work. It's just if the table helps you stay organized and see your coordinate values, then maybe that's a good option for you. All right, let's try the same thing, but this time we're going to add a graphing answer. So I'm only going to show the algebra work. If you want to use a table, please create that table. But first, I want to find x, which means I'm going to plug 0 in for y. -2 times 0 is 0. Look at the x is already by itself. How easy was that? That means my coordinate value is -2, 0. So that's my x, y. Let's find the y-intercept. If I want to keep y, then I plug 0 in for x. 0 just isn't needed, so I have -2 times y. So I'm going to divide by -2. Now you can see why we spent so much time solving equations. So my final coordinate point, the x was 0 and the y is 1. To graph, you guys, it's easier than any graphs you've done so far because all you're doing is plotting two dots. -2, 0 is one dot. 0, 1 is the other dot. Notice it should make sense. This is an x-intercept, meaning it's on the x-axis. You see how that purple dot's on the x-axis? This is a y-intercept, which means I need a y or a dot on the y-axis. The only additional piece after you plot those two dots is make sure to connect them with a line and arrows on the ends. Let's try that one more time. Again, if you want to solve using a table, please do so. I want to find x first, which means I'm going to change the y to 0. Solve the equation. 5 times 0 is 0. Divide both sides by 2. I get x equals 10, which is the coordinate value. 10 is my x. Y was my 0. Remember, because that's what I plugged in right here, was 0. Let's try it again. This time, I want to find a y, which means I'm going to plug 0 in for x. 2 times 0 is 0. 5 times y, so I'm going to divide by 5. Y equals 4. I plugged 0 in for x, and my result was a 4 for the y. Let's plot our two dots. X-intercepts go on the x-axis. Y-intercepts go on the y-axis. Connect your two dots with a line and draw arrows on the end. Now, in your notebooks, if you would please add this little bit of information, we're going to talk about horizontal and vertical lines. So, if I give you the equation y equals some number, we're going to find that number on the y-axis. That makes sense. Y and a number, y-axis number, okay? And we're going to draw a line through that point. Well, let's see. A diagonal line doesn't make sense. A vertical line doesn't make sense. So our only option is a horizontal line. The opposite would be true. If I ask you to graph the line of the equation x equals some number, like x equals 5? Well, we'd go to the x-axis at 5, and we're going to draw a line through that point. Diagonal line doesn't make sense. Horizontal line doesn't make sense. So my only option is a vertical line. So let's apply that. You don't need a whole graph here. Just do a coordinate plane like that. Boom. All right, it says graph y equals -5. It's an equation. It's going to be a line. That means go to the y-axis. All right, y-axis. At what number? -5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, draw a dot there. If I ask you to draw a line through that dot, I can't draw vertical. That'd be the axis. I'm not going to give you one that's on the axis because, first of all, it's just hard to read and look at. Second of all, I'm going to give you a point other than 0. So if I'm going to draw a line through that dot at that point, it is going to be a horizontal line through y at -5. Let's try another way. If I tell you x equals 7, x-axis at 7, draw a dot. If you have to draw a line, because it's an equation, through that dot, well, I'm not going to rewrite the horizontal axis, the x-axis. That doesn't make sense. So it has to be vertical through x at 7. For today's tasks, keep working on these intercepts and horizontal and vertical lines. Make sure that you check out Google Classroom. What's our task to do for this assignment? Make sure you always check PowerSchool to see what you need to catch up on. Let me know if you have any questions, and until next time, have a good one.